When people talk about cutting back on consumption, maybe it's time to discuss and debate the consumption of what? No one's identified consumption per se, consumption of what? And who is to cut back on consumption and who isn't? We can't imagine the super rich cutting back on consumption, because if it wasn't for consumption, they couldn't be super rich. So when you look at consumption, what ought the individual to cut back on, which benefits them, benefits society, and benefits the planet? What are those things you can cut back on consuming? Anything that makes you sick, carbs, sugar, tobacco, alcohol, drugs, anything like that. Cutting back on sitting on the couch, watching television. Cutting back looking at an iPad, a little screen. Number one, those things are addictive. All these things that are addictive, and maybe people have been doing them since they were a child, and so they don't understand that you can give away all those things and still have a happy life, or more satisfactory life, and be far healthier. And the point about cutting back on all those things that make you unhealthy, and they all accumulate to make people either mentally depressed, and physically obese, unhealthy, prone to diseases, and then they become part of the corporate pharmaceutical system, which then preys upon the growth in the number of people being ill, caused by their own behaviour. We can't always avoid being sick or injured. It's not easy to go through life and avoid it altogether. But if we are aware from a young age about diet, about being active, about not sitting in front of TV forever, about not eating carbs, not eating sugar, and all these things, then we cut back on those things when we then consume less of the health budget itself. Not only are we better for ourselves, it's better for us as individuals to cut back on all those things that are detrimental to our health and well-being, our mental well-being, our physical well-being. It's also good for society, because the more and more people that were healthy and fit and healthy, rather than and cut back on consuming those things what made them unhealthy, the less of a cost burden it would be upon the system. And not only that, the society will be a lot happier. These people spend millions of dollars and billions in gyms to look fit and healthy. You don't need to go to a gym at all to get fit and healthy. It's just somewhere to go, but and associate with people. But nonetheless, the philosophy of lowering consumption needs to be put into context of what benefits the individual, that then benefits society, and then benefits the planet. Because this is the idea of cooperacy. You're cooperating in a cooperacy with the positive and practical and pragmatic benefits for nature, and including human nature, including the individual, because no matter the push, the political push, or whatever it is, PC push towards reducing consumption to save the planet and all that, if you're unhealthy and you're suffering from that because you're over consuming things that are bad for you, then no matter what, how they're improving the planet and all that, it's still not going to make you feel any better. It's still not going to feel any better. And let's face it, if we all consumed less of those things that are bad for us, surely the planet must benefit the planet, because you're reducing the amount of transport required. And maybe investments then can be made into leisure and pleasure for people to enjoy their health, leisure and pleasure. The investments what are made into pharmaceuticals and all these other things what are preying on the idea of over consuming things that are bad for us. Maybe then we can change the investment system around so it's health, leisure and pleasure, because that's where society ought to be aiming, towards a less dependent on the working week, a different sort of thinking about how society is and what capitalism is. You can be certain that the richest people on earth do not overconsume those things that make them ill. They're not only rich, they're rich because they're intelligent people. They're smart towards their own health. Sure, they can afford the best doctors, but anyone who's wise and intelligent and that looks after their own health by their diet, not consuming alcohol or too much alcohol, keeping fit and healthy, and staying away from iPads for too much. Don't use iPads, give them away. If you're giving your kids an iPad, you're giving your kids an addiction, which is going to cause them illness. It's that simple. So cutting back on those things that are detrimental to your mental and physical health, and if people took that step, because this corporate is about a reset in thinking, reset in philosophy when it comes to what capital is. What is capital? A capital gain. If you're getting sick, no matter how many portfolios, how many houses you've got, stock exchange, it might be a billionaire on the stock exchange, but if you're extremely unfit and unhealthy, you're suffering a great capital loss, a real organic capital loss, if you like. So it all depends on what you see, what is capital gain. The wise see capital gain as being healthy throughout their life as much as they can by cutting back on all those things that make you unhealthy. And if people take that approach to this cutting back on consumption, the whole world benefits. They benefit, society benefits, the whole world benefits for people being healthy and happy and can enjoy leisure and pleasure. The things that are most enjoyable in life, this is rule number one of cooperacy, if you like. If you can't enjoy what is free, you hardly can enjoy your life at all. If you really have to be consuming all sorts of things all the time to give you some sort of satisfaction, you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why can't I enjoy what's free? A walk in the park, a walk in the forest, all these things, exercise, meditation, and all these things might sound boring, but they're not, because people think they need to be entertained and stimulated all the time by going shopping or looking at little screens all the time. And they're just addictions. That's all they are, addictions created at childhood, created for the TV and media. So if you cut back on all the things that are bad for us and cause investments into health, leisure and pleasure instead, there's still money to be made in those things, keeping society healthy, society being healthy. So it just changes the way the investment is. So there's no about reducing the potential to make billions. It's just saying how it ought to, the philosophy of it, what it needs to change to fit in with the idea of creating a better planet, saving the planet. Well, everyone is on this planet is part of the planet. No one owns this planet. No one owns the planet. You own your own life, and how you do with it, that's your choice. But looking after your health is far more important than looking after your wealth, and it's a far greater capital gain in the end for everyone.